In EU4, the country Majapahit has a fairly limited amount of power and starts in a disaster with very bad negative modifiers. So the question is, why does this nation start in such a weak position in EU4? Especially given the fact that this nation was a dominant power in the Indonesian region a century ago. So in this video, you're going to find out why this nation is so weak. But first, 70% of you who watch our content are not subscribed. So if you enjoy EU4 history content, please consider clicking that button. It really means a lot. And if this video gets 1,250 likes, I will potentially do a video on the famous Queen of Samoa. In order to understand the scale of decline, we need to go back to the beginning, which is in the late 13th century. This story begins in 1289. The Mongol leader Kublai Khan sent a diplomat to a kingdom known as Singhazari, which is in Southeast Asia. Kublai Khan demanded that they bow down to the Mongol Empire. The Mongol diplomat, however, was mistreated by this king, and so the Mongols organised an expedition to subordinate this kingdom. A few years later, the Singhazari king, Kertang Nagara, was killed by a rebellion, and his son-in-law, Raden Rajayan, fled and established a new kingdom known as Majapahit. When the Mongols arrived, Raden assisted the Mongols against his homeland, and then turned on them once they dealt with his rival. The Mongols, exhausted from already fighting a war, left the area. This secured his claim on Java, and under his reign, he managed to expand his territory to encompass most of southern Borneo, along with various other islands, including the most important trading strait of Singapore, which is crucial for the trade between Eastern Asia and the Indian Ocean. Upon his death in 1309, his son Jayan Nagara became the next king. His reign would prove to be difficult, with many rebellions occurring throughout his kingdom. One rebel faction was able to capture the capital city, with Jayan Nagara barely escaping with his life. The king was seen as immoral, and was known to desire his subjects' wives, and took his stepsisters in marriage. He was eventually assassinated in 1328, with the reasons for his assassination still being unclear to this day. One theory is that a high-ranking official, Gajah Mada, planned the murder after the king had took possession of his wife. The next significant monarch was Princess Getarja. She was described as the exalted goddess of three worlds, which the glory of Vishnu radiates. During her reign, there was rapid expansion of territory. The queen, along with her minister, launched successful military campaigns, restoring Javanese influence in Indonesia. It should be noted that Gajah Mada was a key factor in Majapahit's success, and he is now an Indonesian national hero. Although the queen's reign was successful, the golden age of Majapahit would come in the next reign of her son, who was known as Hayam Wuruk. When the queen retired, her son set about cementing his legacy and conquered more territory within Southeast Asia. His reign was also helped by the politically astute Gajah Mada, and Majapahit became a regional power, although one significant blunder of Gajah was in 1357. A kingdom that had not submitted to Majapahit was Sunda in West Java. Majapahit wanted an alliance with Sunda, and so the Majapahit king invited the Sunda king to Bulbat Square and arrange a marriage alliance. However, once the Sundanese royal family had arrived, Gajah stated that the princess would be a concubine as a sign of submission, rather than an equal marriage alliance. This led to a hostility between the two kingdoms, and ended in the Battle of Bulbat, where the royal family of Sunda was killed. Gajah was demoted, and the Sundanese people became angry with Majapahit for years to come. Despite this political blunder, Hayam was talented, and Majapahit peaked within his reign. He enjoyed a monopoly of trade within the region, and a large amount of outlying territories acknowledged his supremacy. Hayam also sent envoys to kingdoms throughout Asia, such as China and Khmer. So by the end of the 14th century, how did Majapahit go from this thriving empire to 50 years later being a failing small kingdom, which we can see in EU4? Well, the decline of the empire began in 1389 upon Hayam's death. This is because the succession war began among his relatives, and it eventually led to the Paragreg War in the early 15th century. although it eventually ended with the victor being able to take Singapore before the succession crisis. The damage was permanent and the kingdom was significantly weakened. During the 15th century, there's a key factor that led to Majapahit's demise. Southeast Asia experienced a rise of Islam, and the Muslim kingdom, Malacca, became incredibly powerful by controlling the Strait of Singapore. This kingdom was backed by China, and diminished Majapahit's influence over time. Other Majapahit vassals followed suit, and converted to Islam. As the Majapahit kingdom became stagnant and weak, Majapahit was unfortunately unable to prevent this. At the start of EU4, Majapahit had lost influence and territory in the region. Nearly a decade later, another succession crisis occurred in 1453, weakening the country further. Eventually, Majapahit collapses completely within a century of EU4 starting, and its land was taken by powerful neighbours. But are you, the EU4 player, able to change that and bring Majapahit back to its former glory? Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, check out some of my other history videos.